Sweet. So over the summer, that's when you caught my eye. I read an article about you and Hart and Hayes, both 4 years old, twins.
The twins.
And how you just had it with people judging your child.
Yeah, you know, I mean, so Hart has cerebral palsy, and he acts different. He walks a little bit different, and he's kind of just a quirky kid. But in a lot of ways, his diagnosis is what I call an invisible disability because he looks typical, but his brain is not typical. And so that's kind of makes it a little bit more confusing for people when they look at him and they're like, well, what's going on with this kid?
When was he diagnosed? Because he's only 4 now.
Yeah, so when he was 1, he had an MRI that diagnosed him with PVL, which is periventricular leukomalacia, and that is essentially just brain death. So they can see that on a scan. Yeah. But he was diagnosed with CP when he was 2 years old, and now CP typically takes longer to diagnose because it's an observational diagnosis and the child doesn't have the aptitude to be able to do things like walk or speak or, you know, clearly until they're about 2. So that's when, you know, the doctor will look at the child and say, okay, this kid has CP.
So you learn of the diagnosis, and as you were educating yourself about it, you started to open up to others who were asking questions about him, seeing him on videos, and you started to be more revealing and transparent.
Yeah, you know, I want to talk to people about this diagnosis because it was scary for me to know that my child was different. And it was a difficult journey to then, you know, go down this path of trying to figure out, well, what is it? Why is he different? What is going on here? And so once we did get the diagnosis, it was just, I felt freedom and I was able to help my child. And I want other people to know that this doesn't define your kid. Yeah. It opens doors for your child.
Yeah. So there you were trying to open doors. And like in so many cases, when someone opens up their life, people started to comment. People started to judge. And that's when I learned of your story and how you just had it. What was the breaking point, Meghan?
You know, I think a lot of people say this is a private matter. You know, you should keep this under wraps.
Why do you think they say that? Because, I mean...
Probably because it's a medical diagnosis, maybe, and maybe they think that's something that should be secret. Yeah. But in my opinion, I have this huge audience, and I want to be able to say, look, let's destigmatize this by talking about it. And what does that mean? And by the way, my kid is still my kid. Yeah. He was born the same kid.
Yeah. So you were hearing it from outside people, but I also know that you and your ex-husband apparently don't see eye to eye on co-parenting arrangements. He's been vocal. It's been messy. How has that added to, I guess, the stress of dealing with also the public scrutiny?
I mean, I think in my brain, I just have to compartmentalize by my son and treating my son and getting him therapies that will benefit him with the co-parenting relationship.
Because he didn't want you to speak out public. That's a big part of his public complaint, is that he too felt you should keep this private.
Yeah, but he had no problem with that when we were on the Real Housewives of Orange County. So, I mean, I think it's kind of just convenient.
So you're under the pressure, under the lens, you're getting heat from your ex on this, but you're still standing strong in your decision to say, you're not going to judge my child. I'm telling and talking about this because by the numbers, he is certainly not alone in this diagnosis. Somewhere between 60 to 100% of infants diagnosed with PVL are also diagnosed with cerebral palsy.
Right.
So you're not the only parent, and whether it's this diagnosis or speech delay or whatever it is, there are parents in this audience, there are people who are watching who learn things about their children, and you talk about it publicly when you have a big platform.
Absolutely.
Or not, because I look at social media all the time and people are, I just saw one the other day on a mom who has a child with autism, and she was talking about the signs in her little girl because she wanted to educate others that it's not just boys.
Help others to understand that if they're suffering in silence, they can then, you know, watch this woman who has a child with autism and say, wait, maybe that is what my kid's going through. And it helps them down the path of getting help for their own child.
And I don't get... we try not to layer into the messiness of life here, but I have to make the point that your ex told a tabloid that your son does not have CP and that he was actually diagnosed with a different condition, which we've already pointed out, PVL. Right. We reached out to Jim Edmonds for his response. He declined to comment. I have to say this because it is just so messy. Do you regret going on the reality show whirl and talking about your life at all? Because I've had Nene Leakes on, I've had Tamar, I've had a list of housewives and folks on, and I often see, you go in thinking it's going to be one thing, and it just gets so messy.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's always a part of going on TV when you're when it's about your life, right?
Yeah.
But I had a great time. I love doing it, and it gave me this platform that I now have, where not only can we speak and we can educate the masses, but I have been able to be a single mom who's successfully raising 3 kids on my own.
Yeah.
So I'm financially independent.
That's a good point. Up next, how has Hart's diagnosis impacted his brother and sister, plus Meghan's powerful message for all parents with children with disabilities after the break.
Okay, Hart, will you take those off so I can get a picture without those on? I'll get candy.
You want candy?
I'll give you candy.
Take them off. I mean, she means put them down.
Yeah, here, wait. Yeah, put them down is what I mean.
Closer.
Hayes, Hart, take them off. Now smile.
Put them down.
Smile and you'll get candy. Asma, put that balloon down. Okay.
Welcome back, Sam Fam. Every parent needs to turn a little candy bribery every now and then. I've been there. And today is about shattering the stigmas people face in their lives, including the judgment that hurts families touched by disability. That was my guest, Meghan King, in intense negotiations with her 3 kids for their back-to-school photos. In 2020, Meghan announced that her son, Hart, who is now 4 and was in the right of that video, you can't miss him, was diagnosed with cerebral palsy. Meghan, I think sometimes, look at this cutie.
Such a hand.
I think, we prepare, especially as women, to be judged, whether it's in the workplace, by friends, by family, whatever. It's when your kid is judged that I think it hits an extra, in the back of your neck. You're just like, okay, wait a minute, and we see it.
Absolutely, and that's again why I wanted to talk about Hart having CP, because I don't want him to ever say, have whispers in the crowd, CP, CP. I want him to just know that CP is a part of him, but it doesn't define him.
Yeah, and it doesn't. And I know you've said that no special need parent wants sympathy. They want awareness. It, again, is always that tough decision, whether you live your life in the public eye or not, putting your kids, especially on social media, and telling their journey. When my son had surgery almost 2 years ago, they found a cyst in his throat. It was hard for me because then people start to say, well, what happened to him? Why did you have to have surgery? She was 48 when she had him. Is that why? You start going down these rabbit holes.
Yeah.
So it was because the medical team at Children's Langone in New York was so incredible that I wanted to thank them for shepherding this nervous mom and my 2-year-old through this surgery. But I was on the fence because I didn't want to have to deal with comments in my section of social media.
Yeah, did you get any comments?
I deleted them.
Yeah, good for you.
Yeah.
And I think that's important that word delete, right? Yeah. So if any negativity comes your way, anybody's way, that is directed to your child, you just have to try your hardest to be strong in your head and know that you're doing the best thing for your kid.
What kind of response have you heard, the positive, from people, other parents who deal with this, even if it's in your neighborhood and someone is asking, why is that kid doing that? Or what's going on with that teenager?
Gosh.
He's not in. I've even heard people judging academically. They're not taking AP English. And you're like, okay, well, my kid is not there.
Yeah. Right. I mean, Tamron, it's been incredible, the response that I've gotten. Not only do complete strangers, just like everybody here, reach out to me and help me with, tell me what therapies are available for my kid, but then I can, in turn, take those therapies and put them on my social media and tell everybody else. People have come up to me on airplanes. I've had people come crying to me, saying that they've never told anyone that their child has a disability, but they want to talk to me about it.
Oh. That is so touching. I know you host the iHeartRadio podcast, Intimate Knowledge, where you talk to listeners, you talk about your love life, you talk about your children, you talk about your dating. The intimate knowledge of a child being judged. Where do you think this will take you now, using your voice to help others?
Well, I mean, Intimate Knowledge is a podcast about sex and dating from my perspective. And so I'm not just a mom of a child with a disability.
Yeah.
There's other parts to me too. And so this is one of those other sides. And I think that's important when one does have a child with a disability to not let that define them, because I can just become so engrossed in it. I have to remind myself that I need to do things that make me happy and make me whole.
With the podcast being about relationships and dating and all of that, do you think a lot of your life now you're judged by the men that you've been with, whether it's, you know, Biden's nephew or is it? So often our dating lives define us, and you have had these high-profile relationships and marriages.
Yeah.
Are you defined by them?
No, I'm done. I'm done putting relationships on social media.
You are?
I don't. Yes. I don't want to be defined by them. And I think, you know, you Google my name and you see all these relationships, and I'm done with that. But yeah, I mean, I think most of the time when I date, my life intimidates people. Yeah. I have these 3 kids.
Are you dating now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Secretly?
I mean, I'm talking to you about it. So.
But you've learned to not put it out there. Because I'll be honest with you, I wanted you on to talk about your son and your advocacy on behalf of parents, but I do know, I do a talk show, I stay on social media. People really clamor to know what's going on in your personal life.
That's why I did the podcast, so I can talk about it. But no names will be named, but stories will be shared.
Oh, the names will come out. Try keeping that a secret from these people.
I'll text you the names.
Okay. Meghan, thank you. Thank you for what you do so that parents don't have to live under the cloud of judgment directed at their children. Thank you so much. And you can hear more from Meghan on her iHeartRadio podcast, Intimate Knowledge.